Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. Stop this wedding. He's the spy who killed my men. The voice sliced through the air like a bullet. For a second, no one moved. Jessica froze mid-step in her white gown, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Ethan looked up from the altar, stunned. And beside him, the best man, Lucas Hayes, tensed, his confident grin curdling into panic. Colonel Frank Carter, Ethan's father, stood at the back of the church in full army dress uniform. His medals glinted under the chandeliers, but it was the rage in his eyes that commanded silence. 2 U.S. Marshals flanked him, guns holstered, eyes locked on Lucas. "You have the wrong guy," Lucas said, voice cracking under the weight of his fake calm. "I don't even," Frank didn't blink. 10 years ago, you led the ambush that killed Sergeant Voss, Simmons, and Ellery in Kandahar. You were one of us. Then you sold us out." Jessica's face drained of color. Guests began whispering. Phones emerged. Someone dropped a wine glass. Ethan stared straight ahead, not saying a word, not blinking. He wasn't surprised. Not anymore. Frank signaled. The marshals lunged forward and cuffed Lucas. Jessica screamed. "What the hell is going on?" Ethan finally spoke, calm as stone. "He wasn't just your secret. He was the man who tried to kill my father. And you? You planned to help him finish the job with me." The silence shattered. Screams. Gasps. Chairs scraping against the floor. Jessica dropped the bouquet and ran. But the doors were locked. Virginia in early spring was beautiful in a way that didn't try too hard. The trees wore soft greens, the air was warm but not humid, and Ethan Carter felt, for once, like life was lining up. He was 29, stable, responsible, and in love with a woman who made Sunday mornings feel like heaven. Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here. And our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. Jessica Monroe, the girl with the kind of smile that could sell peace in a war zone. They met 5 years ago. Her car broke down. He offered a ride. And by the end of that drive, he knew. She wasn't perfect, but she was warm, magnetic, exciting. And he needed that. They were 2 months from their wedding. The estate was booked. The deposit for the band was paid. And Lucas, Ethan's old college buddy, had offered to be his best man, even flew in from D.C. for the full month to help with planning. But Frank Carter, Ethan's father, didn't like him. "I don't trust that one," Frank said over whiskey one night. "Too slick. Doesn't blink enough." Ethan laughed it off. "You interrogated insurgents for 20 years. You think everyone's suspicious." Frank didn't smile. "No, I think killers can hide behind charm." Still, Ethan brushed it aside. Lucas had always been the life of the party. Charming, sure. But Jessica got along great with him, maybe too great, in hindsight. That day at the bakery, when Jessica giggled at one of Lucas's stupid jokes while Ethan signed the cake receipt, something twisted in his gut. It was the way she touched his arm. Barely anything. But Ethan saw it, and he never forgot it. Lucas Hayes was the kind of man who always knew when a camera was pointed his way and exactly what angle to hit. With sea blue eyes, square jaw, and a laugh that made people feel like they belonged, he fit in anywhere. That's what made him so dangerous. He slipped into Ethan's wedding plans like a snake into tall grass. He helped Jessica pick florals, gave speeches at the rehearsal dinner, even took Ethan's measurements when the tailor canceled last minute. Always helpful, always smiling. But Frank kept watching. He'd seen men like this before. Smiles that never touched the eyes. Jokes rehearsed to deflect scrutiny. At first, Frank thought it was just instinct, until he saw Lucas polishing his shoes outside the guest house right-handed. That was the first flag. Lucas was left-handed in college. Later that night, Frank went through his son's guest sign-in sheet. Lucas's handwriting matched a classified report from a decade ago. A defector who vanished mid-mission. The man they only knew as Shade. Frank's blood ran cold. Back to his old unit. To a man named Grayson, who owed him a life debt. And that's when the real story began. The wedding rehearsal should have been a celebration. A soft breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass over the estate lawn. Bridesmaids in pastel dresses laughed as the officiant ran through the ceremony steps. Jessica beamed in her white rehearsal dress, acting every bit the blushing bride-to-be. Ethan stood beside her, smiling like a man in love. But Frank Carter wasn't smiling. He sat in the back, quiet, observing. He had always been a man of few words, the kind of father who taught lessons by action more than lecture. And right now, his instincts screamed louder than any war zone had. He watched Lucas, how his eyes lingered on Jessica a second too long. How Jessica didn't flinch when Lucas brushed her waist during a mock entrance. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't innocent. Later that evening, during dinner, Frank pulled Jessica aside. He didn't mince words. You and Lucas. There's something going on. Jessica blinked, then laughed. But it was hollow. Frank, he's like a brother to Ethan. That's not what I asked. She put on a smile. You're reading too much into it. Maybe it's time you relaxed a bit. Frank's jaw flexed, but he nodded. Sure. He let her walk away, but her pupils had dilated. Her pulse had jumped. Years in interrogations taught him how to read bodies, not just faces. That night, Frank sat alone in the study. He opened a folder on his tablet, classified documents, marked in red. He enlarged the photo from 2013, the grainy image of a man in tactical gear walking away from a burning outpost in Afghanistan. Then he opened Lucas's Instagram. Same gait, same facial structure. A birthmark behind the left ear. It wasn't a coincidence. It started with a whisper. Ethan wasn't a snooper. He respected privacy, trusted Jessica. But something had changed over the past few weeks, something subtle and offbeat, like a song playing slightly out of tune. She was warmer in public, colder in private. Kisses started to feel like obligations. That night, as he came downstairs to grab his laptop charger, he heard her voice, soft, flirty, almost seductive. He paused on the staircase, listening through the thin crack of the kitchen door. After the wedding, he'll never see it coming. A pause. I want to watch him realize it. Every second of it. Ethan's stomach dropped. He stepped closer, his heartbeat thudding like boots on concrete. Jessica's voice continued. You promise we're leaving that night? The policy pays fast, right? She laughed. That's why I told him I wanted to hike the cliffs. Alone time. Romantic, remember? Ethan backed away like a ghost, each step heavier than the last. He returned to their bedroom, pretending nothing had happened. He lay beside her, breathing through the panic, as she climbed into bed and kissed his shoulder. Her lips felt like ice. He didn't sleep that night. At 2:34 a.m., while Jessica snored softly beside him, Ethan opened her phone. The password? Her birth year and lucky number. She hadn't even tried to hide it. His fingers trembled as messages loaded. Jessica, I checked. His life insurance kicks in right after the vows. $500,000. You and me, baby. Lucas will disappear by Tuesday. Ethan's hand went numb. The woman he loved wasn't just cheating. She was planning his death. The next morning, Ethan played dumb. He made her coffee, kissed her cheek, told her she looked beautiful in her robe. Inside, he was screaming. He waited until she left for a fitting, then tore the house apart. Second phone? Found it. Hidden inside a tampon box in the back of her closet, classic misdirection. It was older, cracked screen, but powered on. No lock code. What he found made the first discovery feel like a warm-up. There were voice notes. Jessica, we'll say it was an accident. The trail gets slippery. He falls. Easy. Lucas, you push. I'll clean up. No body, no crime. Hundreds of photos. Cash transfers. Hidden email accounts. Hotel key cards saved as pictures. Dates matching weekends when Jessica claimed she was visiting her sister in Charlotte. Ethan slumped against the wall, shaking. Then his phone buzzed. Dad, 10:06 a.m. You were right. Lucas Hayes is not who he says he is. Attached was a PDF, military records, CIA blacklisting, a manhunt file. Lucas had faked his death in Pakistan. He was declared Kia, but his body was never found. And now he was back, in Virginia, posing as Ethan's best man, sleeping with Jessica, plotting a murder. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The world around him blurred. But not from panic. From clarity. He wasn't going to confront them. He wasn't going to cry or scream. He was going to burn their entire world down, with evidence, precision, and patience. They wanted a wedding? They were going to get one. Just not the ending they'd planned. Frank sat in the den with the curtains drawn, the glow of the tablet screen flickering against his face. The dossier in front of him confirmed what his instincts had whispered for weeks. Lucas Hayes was not only dangerous, he was wanted. CIA code red. Disavowed. Former asset turned mercenary. Vanished in 2013. Last sighted near the Kandahar province, weeks after Frank's convoy was ambushed. 3 of his men died. Lucas's name had come up in hushed conversations and redacted reports. But no body was ever found. Now he was alive. Laughing. Toasting. Sleeping in Frank's son's house. Frank's fingers clenched around the whiskey glass. The door creaked. Ethan entered, hollow-eyed. He didn't speak. He just held out Jessica's second phone. Frank scrolled. His jaw tightened with every tap. When he reached the audio file, he stopped. Listened. Then he closed the phone. His voice, when it came, was flat steel. They plan to kill you. Ethan nodded once, jaw locked. I want them both ruined. Frank looked at his son, the boy he once carried on his back during 4th of July hikes, now burning with quiet fury. Then we don't go to them. We make them come to us. How? Frank stood. We give them what they want. A wedding. A honeymoon. And we make sure the end isn't ours. He picked up his phone. Dialed a number he hadn't used in years. This is Colonel Carter. I need Grayson. No, tell him it's about the one who disappeared. He hung up and looked at Ethan. We're not calling the police yet. Not until we have everything. When the hammer falls, it's going to fall hard. Ethan didn't blink. Let's bury them. 3 days later, Frank drove alone to a closed VFW outpost an hour outside town. A man waited inside, grizzled, limping, missing part of his ear. Grayson. They shook hands in silence. Frank pulled out the dossier. He's back. Living under the name Lucas Hayes. Embedded himself into my son's wedding. Sleeping with the fiancée. Grayson stared, jaw clenched. That son of a bitch. Frank nodded slowly. I need everything. Back channel records. Last satellite ping. Any field photos. If we're going to make this public, I want it bulletproof. Grayson opened a duffel. Laid out files like puzzle pieces. You're lucky. Someone flagged him 2 months ago in Tijuana. Facial recognition hit. CIA buried it. Classified it as a false match. Frank's eyes narrowed. It wasn't. They worked for hours, piecing together a trail. Lucas had traveled under 5 identities. All clean. All ghost-like. But one mistake stood out. A motel registration in Maryland under the alias Marcus Holloway. Paid in cash. But the car? It was a rental, booked with a card under a fake shell company. Frank smiled grimly. He got sloppy. He never thought anyone would come looking. Grayson slid a burner phone across the table. When you're ready, call this number. My guys will intercept the honeymoon flight. But if you want to make a scene... Oh, I do, Frank said. At the altar. I want his last taste of freedom to be the second before I break him in front of 100 people. Grayson exhaled. You always did love fireworks. Frank looked up, eyes cold. This isn't about fireworks. This is about revenge. For my men. For my son. He paused. And for every bastard who thinks they can kill and disappear. Back home, Ethan sat in his office, a mountain of evidence on the desk, printed texts, photos, a USB stick with video clips from motel cameras. All backed up twice. One copy with Frank. One with a lawyer friend under strict instruction. If anything happens to me, release it all. He stared at Jessica's face in the photos. The way she smiled up at Lucas like he was the sun, and she was ready to burn just to feel warmth. There was no confusion now. No room for doubt. This wasn't weakness. This was war. The door creaked open. Jessica leaned in, holding 2 mugs. Hey, babe. You've been holed up all morning. Coffee. He turned, took the mug. Forced a smile. Thanks. Just reviewing the honeymoon itinerary. Her eyes lit up. You're still okay with the Colorado trip? I know it's remote, but it'll be so romantic. Absolutely, Ethan said, masking his voice perfectly. I'm looking forward to it. She beamed. I knew you'd love it. Just us, out there. No distractions. Exactly, he said softly. Just us. As she walked away, humming, Ethan opened his laptop and finished syncing the last set of files to a hidden cloud drive. The plan was in motion. Every text she sent now was screen recorded. Every call was being mirrored. But one file stood out, an old audio from Lucas. A throwaway comment Ethan almost skipped over. Lucas, laughing, if the dad ever gets in our way, I'll finish what I started in Kandahar. Ethan's stomach turned. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just greed. This was a man who killed soldiers and slept like a baby. And the woman Ethan loved had invited that monster into their home. He pressed play again. He wanted the anger to stay fresh. Because the next phase was coming. And Ethan was done pretending. The estate looked like something out of a magazine. White roses lined the stone steps, sunlight filtered through the massive oak trees, and soft jazz played in the distance. To the outside world, it was a dream wedding in progress. Inside Ethan, a war. He stood on the balcony of the guest suite, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the window rather than the mirror. He didn't want to look himself in the eye. Behind him, Jessica twirled in her dress, humming to herself. Can you believe it's tomorrow? She said, grinning. I can't wait to call you my husband. Ethan forced a smile. Almost there. She crossed the room and slipped her arms around his waist. This is the happiest I've ever been. He stared at her hands on his stomach. Delicate, perfectly manicured, capable of murder. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, Ethan crept into the kitchen. Frank sat at the island, sipping coffee, documents spread across the table. A small laptop showed a live feed from a bug planted in Jessica's purse. Anything new? Ethan whispered. Frank nodded. She called Lucas. Told him she switched the hike location. More remote. Less foot traffic. Ethan blinked. She's improvising. No, she's optimizing. Frank slid over a map with 3 red XS. Each spot is near a cliff. No cell reception. High drop. Instant cover story. Ethan sat down, head heavy. She's done this before. Frank's eyes didn't move from the map. Or Lucas has. Silence settled. Then Frank spoke. You still sure you want this to happen at the altar? Yes, Ethan replied. Let her walk into her fantasy. Let her think she's getting everything. He stared at the wedding ring box sitting beside the evidence folder. And then let's rip it all away. Rehearsal day felt like a parade of smiles stretched too tightly. Jessica glided through the crowd like royalty, thanking guests, complimenting the caterers, even adjusting the flower girl's headband with a doting grin. Her laughter rang louder than usual, almost rehearsed. Lucas, ever the charmer, arrived late, making a joke about traffic as he slapped Ethan on the back. Tomorrow's the big day, huh? He grinned. Hope you're ready for married life, brother. Ethan smiled. Can't wait. Lucas leaned closer. Make sure to pack extra socks. Colorado's gonna be cold. He winked. Ethan laughed, but inside, he wanted to punch through his own teeth to stay calm. Later that night, Jessica and Lucas texted under aliases. J, tomorrow night. Trailhead B, 3.7 miles in. It's perfect. L, pack light. Leave the rest to me. Ethan read it all in real time. The data mirrored to his tablet. Every keystroke recorded. Frank stood beside him, arms crossed. She's ready to bury you, he said flatly. No, Ethan replied. She's ready to bury a version of me that no longer exists. They printed the final batch of evidence and sealed it in labeled folders. Each one had a copy of Jessica's texts, audio recordings, and financial transfers. One for the officiant, one for the lawyer, one for the U.S. Marshal already hiding in the crowd. Ethan closed the last folder and exhaled. Let them smile. Let them laugh. Frank nodded. Because tomorrow, they choke on it. The final rehearsal ended with champagne flutes clinking and cameras flashing. Jessica gave a teary-eyed speech about forever love and finding her soulmate, while Lucas looked on, smirking behind his glass of wine. Ethan's stomach turned, but he played his part, kissing her hand and whispering sweet nonsense that made guests sigh and smile. When the crowd thinned, Lucas caught Ethan alone near the back exit. "You ready for the best hike of your life, man?" he said, voice low. Ethan met his gaze, looking forward to the views. Lucas chuckled. "Yeah, they'll take your breath away." The words lingered like poison in the air. Later that night, Jessica stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, eyes gleaming as she tried on her veil. "I feel like a queen," she whispered. "You look like one," Ethan said from the doorway, watching her. She turned. Do you think we'll really be happy?" Ethan walked in, placed his hands on her shoulders. "I think we're exactly where we're meant to be." She smiled and kissed him, and he let her. But as he left the room, he whispered under his breath, "See you at the altar." The trap was set, every mask polished, every camera in place. The next time she smiled at him would be the last time she smiled free. Morning sunlight leaked through the blinds of the bridal suite as Jessica zipped her white leather travel bag. She'd packed light, just like Lucas told her to. Hiking boots, a black windbreaker, 3 changes of clothes, and hidden in the lining, a burner phone and small black envelope. Inside the envelope, printed copies of Ethan's life insurance policy, now active. She looked at her reflection, hair in soft waves, skin glowing. She smiled at herself. "You did it," she whispered. "After tomorrow, we're free." She tucked the envelope inside the bag's hidden pocket and clicked it shut. Across the house, Ethan watched it all through the hidden camera Frank had installed in the hallway smoke detector. Jessica's every move was being recorded, every word transcribed. The feed ran directly to Ethan's laptop. Frank stood behind him, arms folded, expression unreadable. "She's rehearsing murder," he said coldly. "Like it's choreography." Ethan didn't respond. He just hit record and tagged the clip. Intent to kill, bridal suite, 8:04 a.m. An alert chimed. Another message from Lucas. "L. Got the gear. Meet you after the vows. Northgate. No turning back." Jessica replied with a heart emoji and a message. "J. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." Frank's knuckles turned white. "Let me take her now," he said. "Spare you the theater." "No," Ethan said quietly. "Let her believe she's won. Let her get dressed. Smile for the cameras. Walk down the aisle. Let her soak in every second." He turned to his father, eyes like sharpened glass. "Then we'll detonate everything." By noon, the estate buzzed with chatter. Cars pulled into the gravel drive. Guests in pastel dresses and press suits mingled under the white canopy tent. Champagne flowed. Cameras flashed. Smiles everywhere. None of them knew the real show hadn't started yet. Ethan moved through the crowd with practiced ease, hugging relatives, thanking caterers, nodding politely at distant cousins. Every second was performance. Frank stood near the bar, sunglasses on, earpiece tucked behind his right ear. He scanned faces, watched entrances, noticed patterns. Then he spotted her. Agent Lennox. Dressed as a guest in a pale green dress, she carried a clutch bag that wasn't a clutch at all. Inside were arrest warrants, backup IDs, and a hidden mic. She nodded at Frank as she passed, eyes flicking toward Lucas, who was helping Jessica's cousin hang up coats. "All good," she murmured as she brushed past Ethan. "Let's make it great," he whispered back. At the gift table, Ethan's best friend, Danny, also briefed, stacked fake presents that were actually loaded with audio gear. Hidden speakers had been installed behind the altar steps. The USB stick loaded with Jessica's messages sat inside the officiant's prayer book. Everything was in place. Back inside, Jessica checked herself in the mirror one last time. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair set. The diamond necklace sparkled, a gift from Ethan last Christmas. She thought about pawning it in Belize. Her phone buzzed. "Lucas, smile big today." You're about to be rich, baby. She smiled to herself and typed back, Jay, and you're about to be mine. Forever. She didn't notice the blinking red light hidden inside her bouquet ribbon. Every word she typed was being mirrored, and every lie she told would soon echo through a speaker. As guests settled in for the final rehearsal dinner, Lucas raised his glass and clinked it with a knife. All right, everyone, he said, standing. A quick toast to my brother Ethan, loyal, honest, good to the core. Polite laughter. Ethan smiled from across the table, hands folded calmly on his lap. Lucas continued, You've always been the guy who did things the right way. The long way. The safe way. A sly grin crept into his voice. But this weekend, you're throwing caution to the wind. And I think that's brave. Guest chuckled. Jessica giggled beside Ethan, rubbing his arm like they were truly in love. Marriage, Lucas said, is a leap of faith. But more than that, it's trust. And there's nothing stronger than trust when you've got the right partner. Ethan raised his glass. To the right partner, he said, eyes locked on Lucas. The air between them tensed for a single second, an invisible thread stretched taut. Frank watched from the edge of the tent, jaw clenched. Agent Lennox nodded subtly. They had audio and facial reaction analysis on Lucas from every angle. Jessica whispered something into Ethan's ear. Tomorrow, we start forever. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, forever. As the dinner wound down, guests filed out to the veranda for dessert. Frank cornered Ethan near the entry. He's onto something. That toast, he's feeling too bold. He's giddy, Ethan said. That's not suspicion. That's a man who thinks he's already won. Frank gave a tight nod. Then tomorrow, we break him. Ethan looked back toward Jessica, who stood laughing beside Lucas, her veil in her hand like a trophy. We don't break them, he said coldly. We erase them. Frank Carter sat alone in the guest room, surrounded by a tactical kind of silence, the kind he hadn't felt since his last operation in Kabul. The room was quiet, but his mind wasn't. On the nightstand beside him lay three things: his formal army uniform, a sealed envelope marked for Ethan, and a sidearm he hadn't touched in years. Not to use. Just to remind himself of what was at stake. He took out an old photo. Ethan at 10, wearing a Halloween soldier costume, saluting in the backyard. Frank remembered that day like it was a heartbeat ago. It was the same day Ethan told him, "One day I'll be brave like you, Dad." Frank had promised then and there, silently, that no matter what, no matter how far, how hard, how painful, he would always protect his son. Even from something he couldn't have predicted, a betrayal dressed in white lace and false vows. He opened the envelope, reread the speech he'd prepared for the wedding. But the words felt fake now. Plastic. He tossed the page aside and opened a new one. The new speech wasn't a toast. It was a declaration. Of truth. Of exposure. Of justice. A knock. Ethan entered, dressed in his suit, face pale but composed. You ready? Frank nodded, stood, and looked him in the eye. I ever tell you what I promised your mother the day you were born? Ethan shook his head. I told her if this world ever tried to break you, it'd have to go through me first. Ethan's voice cracked. Today, I think the world's gonna find that out. They embraced briefly, no drama, no tears. Just iron between blood. Then Frank picked up the uniform and said, Let's go finish this. Jessica stood behind the closed door of her dressing room, bouquet in hand, veil pinned tight, makeup flawless. She looked exactly like the woman she wanted the world to see, ethereal, innocent, glowing. But her phone, tucked into the side pocket of her purse, held a truth her face never would. Lucas, final check-in. North Trail's clear. Meet time, 7:15 p.m. GPS locked. You sure you won't suspect anything? Jessica, please. He thinks I'm obsessed with him. He's blind. A smile played on her lips as she reread it. She couldn't wait to disappear into the mountains with Lucas and the insurance money. There was a knock at the door. 5 minutes, the wedding planner chirped. You ready, Jess? Jessica glanced in the mirror, adjusted the pendant around her neck, Ethan's grandmother's gift, and whispered, almost too ready. Outside, guests were being seated. Ethan stood near the altar, hands steady, heart pounding under the weight of the silence. Frank, now in uniform, moved into position near the side aisle. Agent Lennox sat disguised among the second row with the hidden camera pin clipped to her program. Everything was in place. Ethan looked up toward the doors and saw the first bridesmaid step out, followed by another. Then came Jessica, radiant, smiling like a saint, clutching her bouquet tight. The music swelled. Guests rose. She walked down the aisle slowly, eyes locked on Ethan. Ethan didn't blink, didn't smile. He simply watched. Jessica saw his expression and faltered for half a second, but recovered, twisting it into what she thought was anticipation. What she didn't know was that her every step was one closer to exposure. Behind her, Lucas stood in the corner, adjusting his cufflinks. This was it. The last walk she'd ever take as a free woman. The ceremony began with sunlight dripping through the arched windows, casting warm light on perfect lies. The officiant smiled warmly. Guests whispered softly. Jessica squeezed Ethan's hand as they faced each other, veil barely trembling. Dearly beloved, the officiant began. We are gathered today to celebrate. Wait, Ethan said, interrupting, voice clear and calm. Gasps rippled across the room. The officiant blinked. I'm sorry, is there? Ethan turned toward the guests. Before we continue, I'd like to share something important. Something honest. He nodded toward the sound tech at the back. A quiet click. The speakers crackled, and then Jessica's voice filled the chapel. Jessica, recording the trail gets slippery. He falls. Easy. People froze. Some looked at each other in confusion. Others stared forward, wide-eyed. Jessica's face drained of color. Lucas, recording you push. I'll clean up. No body, no crime. Murmurs became shock. Jessica dropped her bouquet. What is this? What the F*** is this? Frank stepped forward from the aisle. I'd like to introduce you all to a man named Lucas Hayes. Ex-CIA, disavowed. Last seen after betraying his unit in Kandahar. He pointed at Lucas. Arrest him. U.S. Marshals emerged from the back rows in plain suits. Jessica shrieked. No. No. He told me, he said. Ethan stepped forward, shaking, not with fear, but with controlled fire. You lied to everyone, Jessica. You planned my death for money. You thought this wedding would be your cover story. Jessica backed away. You set me up. I let you, Ethan said. Every step, every kiss, every dress fitting. I let you believe you won. Frank tossed a thick folder onto the altar. Inside here? Evidence. Enough to bury both of you. Jessica turned to Lucas. But Lucas had already bolted. Too late. He hit the doors. They didn't open. The locks had been rigged from the inside. The last thing he saw was 3 agents rushing him from all sides. And the last thing Jessica heard, before she was cuffed in her wedding dress, was the crowd gasping, phones raised, broadcasting her shame to the world. The church was no longer a sanctuary. It was a live crime scene. Jessica was pinned against the pew by 2 federal agents, hands zip-tied, dress torn at the sleeve. Her veil had slipped, dangling halfway down her back like a flag in surrender. She sobbed incoherently, mascara bleeding down her face. Lucas was already on the ground near the back exit, agents kneeling on his back, wrists bent behind him. He didn't speak. He didn't struggle. His face was blank, like a man who'd already moved on from this life. But the rest of the room? It was chaos. Guests gasped, screamed, filmed. Dozens of phones rose into the air, capturing every second. The same aunt who cried during Jessica's vows now whispered, "Oh my God, this is on live stream. My cousin in Oregon is watching." Frank addressed the crowd with steady, commanding presence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, but justice required a little theater." Someone clapped, then another, and then silence. Ethan stepped forward again, eyes locked on Jessica's. "Did you ever really love me?" he asked, voice razor-sharp but calm. Jessica trembled. I thought I did at first, but he promised me a future. You were always so safe. I trusted you, Ethan said. I would have given you everything. I didn't want everything, she hissed. I wanted more. Frank looked at Ethan. It's over. Let's get you out of here. Ethan didn't move right away. He just looked at the wreckage, the stained glass flickering behind the chaos, the petals scattered across the floor, and the woman he once thought was his entire life, reduced to a sobbing mess in lace and lies. Then he turned and walked out of his own wedding. Free. 2 weeks later, the headlines still hadn't stopped. Bride busted at the altar, double life exposed and viral wedding takedown. Lucas Hayes, ex-CIA turned fugitive, caught at ceremony in Virginia. Footage had racked up millions of views on TikTok, Instagram, even late-night shows. Everyone had an opinion. Some were stunned, some entertained. But no one could deny one thing: Ethan Carter had dodged a bullet in a white dress. He stayed out of the public eye. While Jessica remained in federal holding, awaiting trial for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud, Lucas was being transported to a federal black site for interrogation about his past ties to Middle Eastern insurgents. Frank returned to base briefly to finalize documents, but only after dropping off 2 thick binders with prosecutors, each containing detailed breakdowns of Lucas and Jessica's communications, finances, and attempted escape plans. Ethan, meanwhile, moved back into his old apartment downtown, the one he'd left behind when he thought he was building a new life with Jessica. Now, it was quiet, empty, but his. He stood in the shower one morning, letting the water hit his face, trying to rinse away the ache that still sat behind his ribs. Not grief, not heartbreak, just betrayal. It lingered like a bruise that didn't show on skin. He hadn't told many people what it felt like to lay beside someone planning your murder. How the lie wasn't in her voice, it was in the silence between her words. He dried off, poured coffee, and opened his laptop. Emails. Legal notes. A message from Agent Lennox. Pre-trial begins next Friday. You'll be called. Be prepared to hear her defense. Ethan stared at the screen. What defense could she possibly offer? He clicked reply. I'll be there. Let her lie again. This time, under oath. 3 days before the pre-trial, Ethan received a call from a blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello. A low voice on the other end. I need to meet. Tonight. The coffee shop on Rosemont. Come alone. The line clicked dead. He knew that voice. It belonged to Greg Tolson, an old college roommate who'd once been Ethan's closest friend. They drifted after graduation. No bad blood. Just life. But Greg had also been Jessica's coworker. And now something felt wrong. That night, Ethan entered the dim cafe. Greg sat in the back corner, hoodie pulled up, eyes hollow. You're lucky, Greg said. You got out. Ethan sat across from him. Why are we here? Greg swallowed hard. They tried to rope me in. A year ago. Jessica said they were planning something huge. She needed help rerouting digital payment logs for the insurance policy. Ethan froze. You helped? I didn't know the details, Greg said quickly. She told me it was just to hide some funds for a business. But then Lucas called me. Offered me a cut. Said it was a retirement plan. Ethan's fists clenched. So you sold me out. Greg looked down. I backed out. Ghosted them. But I didn't warn you. I was a coward. Ethan stared at him. You're gonna testify. Greg blinked. What? You want to make this right? You go on record. You tell the court what you knew. What they said. How deep it went. Greg hesitated. If I do, Lucas's people might come after me. They already know your name. Greg nodded slowly. I'll do it. Ethan stood. Good. Because the story isn't over. And everyone who had a hand in this, every one of you, is going down. Ethan sat in the courtroom lobby, dressed in a charcoal suit, fingers tapping against the edge of a paper cup. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He was waiting. Greg arrived 10 minutes later, looking like a ghost, dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled, breathing shallow. You good? Ethan asked, not moving. Greg nodded, but didn't speak right away. Then, she's in there, already talking to her lawyer. Ethan didn't ask what she looked like. He didn't care. They were called in. The courtroom wasn't full, just early pre-trial attendees. Judge, lawyers, clerks, security. Jessica sat at the defense table in a muted gray blazer, hair pulled back, face pale but composed. She didn't look at Ethan. She looked through him. The judge spoke. Mr. Carter, Are you prepared to present witness testimony today? Yes, Your Honor. Greg was called to the stand first. He sat down, eyes fixed on the judge, not Jessica. Mr. Tolson, did the defendant ever speak to you about falsifying digital records tied to Ethan Carter's life insurance policy? Yes. Did she ask you to modify any payment pathways or obfuscate any financial traces? Yes. And did you comply? Greg hesitated. Partially. Until I realized what it was for. Jessica leaned to her lawyer, whispered. Ethan saw her lips move. He's lying. But the lawyer didn't look convinced. Greg's voice cracked. They told me they were going to disappear. I didn't know the plan, not at first. But when Lucas called me, I knew. I backed out. I didn't tell Ethan. And I regret it. Silence. Jessica's lawyer stood. Mr. Tolson, isn't it true you have a history of financial instability? Objection, Ethan's lawyer said instantly. Sustained, the judge snapped. Greg looked at Ethan as he stepped down. There was no smile. No thanks. Just debt repaid. After court adjourned for the day, Agent Lennox approached Ethan in the corridor. She held a flash drive in her hand. Came from Jessica's work laptop, she said. Decrypted this morning. Thought you'd want to see it before it's presented in full. Ethan took it without a word. Back at his apartment, he plugged it in. One folder. A single video. Timestamped 2 months before the wedding. He clicked. Jessica sat in their bedroom. Camera angled on her like a vlog. She wore his hoodie. Lucas says the plan's almost ready. I'm nervous, but excited. Like, if this works, we're rich. Gone. And Ethan. She laughed. A real one. He still makes my coffee every morning. Still thinks I'm the one. Poor guy. He's sweet. Boring. But sweet. She paused. Her eyes darkened. Sometimes I wonder if he knows. But then he kisses me like I'm gold, and I remember, nah, he's just a fool. She leaned closer to the camera. And fools are meant to be used. Ethan's jaw clenched. His hand hovered over the mouse. He hit replay. Watched the whole thing again. And again. He didn't cry. Didn't yell. He just memorized every word. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about making sure her name would carry the stain forever. He picked up his phone and called Lennox. Play that video in full. No redactions. I want the court, the jury, and every reporter watching to see exactly who she is. 2 days later, Jessica took the stand. Her lawyer painted her as a victim. A woman manipulated by a dangerous man, Lucas Hayes. A woman who feared for her life, who acted under duress. Jessica played the part well. Soft voice. Tears on cue. Hands folded delicately. I didn't want to hurt Ethan, she said, voice trembling. I loved him. But Lucas, he threatened me. Said he'd kill me if I didn't help him. Ethan sat motionless in the gallery. Watching. Waiting. The prosecutor approached the bench. Jessica, he said, do you recognize this video? Her eyes flashed, only for a second. I don't remember making it. He hit play. The room filled with her own laughter. Her confession. Her cruelty. The silence that followed was suffocating. The jury didn't look at her. The judge didn't blink. Her lawyer fidgeted, face paling with each passing second of audio. When the video ended, Jessica looked straight at Ethan for the first time since the wedding. She whispered, You ruined me. Ethan stood slowly. No, he said. You did that all by yourself. The courtroom was still reeling from the video. Jessica's image, frozen on the screen with that smug smirk, still lingered in everyone's mind. But then, the prosecutor paused, walked back to the table, pulled out a second flash drive. We received this anonymously, he said, voice firm. This was not found on any of the defendant's devices. It was mailed. No return address. But after verification, we believe its contents are credible. Jessica's face went pale. She knew. The screen lit up again. This time, it wasn't her. It was Lucas. Alone. Shirtless. Scar on his rib. Sitting in a dimly lit room, speaking directly to the camera like a confession. She thinks she's playing me. That she's using me to get out with Ethan's money. But Jessica Monroe is just another pawn. I've done this before. And if she thinks she's getting half, she's dead wrong. He leaned closer to the lens, ice cold. I don't need her. I never did. Gasps. Jessica stood up. That's fake. That's edited. The judge banged the gavel. Sit down, Ms. Monroe. But she kept screaming. He lied to me. Ethan blinked slowly. Everything clicked. The hike. The isolated trail. The solo time. Jessica hadn't just planned Ethan's death. She was marked too. Lucas had been setting her up the whole time. And now she realized she was never meant to survive, either. It wasn't love. It wasn't betrayal. It was a three-layered con. And she was just another target. That night, back in his apartment, Ethan couldn't sleep. Lucas hadn't spoken since the arrest. Refused to cooperate. Not a single word since he was dragged from the chapel floor in cuffs. But now, that video, that meant he had planned to confess. Or manipulate. Or worse, warn someone. Ethan opened his inbox. New message. No sender. Just a subject line. Don't trust anyone. The video attached was surveillance footage. Not Courtroom. Not Jessica's apartment. It was his. Security camera. Outside his building. 3 nights before the wedding. A car pulled up. Parked. Door opened. Lucas stepped out. But he wasn't alone. A man in a ball cap got out next. Ethan squinted. Froze the frame. Enhanced it. His throat closed. Danny. His best friend. His groomsman. The one who helped rig the speakers. The one who played dumb while Lucas toasted his future. Ethan stood up, the chair scraping the floor. He rewound. Watched again. Danny and Lucas shaking hands. Smiling. Exchanging a package. He called Frank. Dad, there's another one. Frank arrived in under 30 minutes. He'd barely parked before storming inside. Tell me what you saw, he said. Ethan replayed the footage. Frank watched, jaw tightening. That's Danny. No doubt. He helped Lucas. Maybe helped her, too. Frank leaned against the counter, thinking fast. He had access. You trusted him. He set the stage with you, remember? The fake presence. The sound system. Ethan's breath quickened. He could have sabotaged it. Warned them. Or worse. Frank opened his phone. Called Lennox. Track Daniel Blake. Priority 1. Flag all airport activity. He's a flight risk now. Back in the video, Ethan noticed something else. Danny's arm around Lucas. Not just a handshake. A casual, brotherly gesture. This wasn't a payoff, he muttered. This was coordination. Lennox called back within minutes. Your friend disappeared. Quit his job the day after the wedding. No forwarding address. Rented a car and drove south. Last ping was near Louisiana. Frank's voice was grave. He's running. Ethan stared at the paused frame. Jessica lied. Lucas deceived. But Danny? He knew Ethan. His childhood. His fears. His trust. This betrayal cut differently. Deeper. Frank put a hand on his shoulder. You still want justice? Ethan's voice was cold. I want all of them to pay. The next morning, Frank's phone rang at 6:12 a.m. Sir, we have movement. Agent Lennox was on speaker. Her voice was clipped. Urgent. Danny's rental car was found abandoned outside a rest stop in Mississippi. Burned. No prints. No blood. Ethan leaned over the kitchen table, eyes dark. That's a message. Frank nodded slowly. He doesn't want to disappear. He wants us to know he disappeared. Lennox continued. That location is a known dead zone. It's where runners go to vanish into southern smuggling routes, private airstrips, cash-only towns, border runners. If Danny had help from Lucas, he's got serious connections. Ethan's stomach tightened. So he's not scared. No, Frank said. He's escalating. Later that day, Ethan went back to his old office to retrieve some personal files. Everything looked the same, his desk, his photos, his bookshelf. But when he opened his top drawer, there was something new. An envelope. No return address. No markings. He opened it slowly. Inside were photos of him and Jessica. Dozens. Dinner dates. Movie nights. Even a photo of Ethan sleeping in bed, vulnerable, unaware. And on the back of the last one? A single sentence in red ink. You always were too easy to love. Frank stared at the note. He's taunting you. No, Ethan said, breathing hard. He's showing me he was always watching. Frank and Ethan sat across from Agent Lennox in a closed-door debriefing. He's been hiding in plain sight for over a year, she said. Bank logs showed Danny opened a joint shell account with a Holloway Group LLC, same ghost company Lucas used to launder stolen identities through South America. Frank exhaled. They built a triangle. Jessica was the inside job. Lucas was the ghost. Danny was the mole. Lennox added, he forged the insurance documents. He routed your data into dummy servers. He scrubbed GPS trails. The tech behind the murder plan? It was his. Ethan didn't flinch. He was past the stage of shock now. Just strategy. He knew I'd never suspect him, he said. He watched me grieve while he helped plan my death. Lennox nodded. We have partial voice recordings of Lucas referring to Danny as the thread that held the seams together. He wasn't just a helper. He designed the exit. Frank leaned forward. Can we trace him? We can try. But if he's where we think he is, we'll need leverage. Ethan stood. Then give me a mic. Give me a plane. I'll be the leverage. Lennox raised a brow. You're volunteering to bait a man who tried to kill you? Ethan's eyes burned cold. I'm not baiting him. He paused. I'm closing him. 2 days later, in a blacked-out surveillance van near a private airstrip in Texas, Ethan sat strapped with a wire, heart-pounding steady. Across the tarmac, a small cafe front, dirty sign, flickering neon, served as the meeting point. Danny's last card transaction pinged there. Local intel confirmed sightings. The trap was set. Ethan walked in alone. The door chimed. The air smelled like burnt grease and old cigarettes. A country song played on a broken jukebox. And in the back booth, sunglasses, hoodie up, coffee untouched, sat Danny. He didn't move as Ethan approached. Been a while, Danny muttered, barely looking up. You left something behind, Ethan said, sliding into the booth. Me. Danny smirked. You were never meant to get that far. Neither were you, Ethan said calmly. A long pause. Danny finally met his eyes. So what now? You gonna drag me back? Play hero again? No, Ethan said. You're gonna confess. Or I walk out and let the marshals take you down. Danny leaned forward. You don't get it. Lucas wasn't just a ghost. He was a gateway. There are more like him. People who make the rules vanish. You kill him? 2 more rise. I'm not here to kill him, Ethan said. Danny raised an eyebrow. I'm here to collapse every name in that network. The cafe door opened. 3 agents entered. Danny didn't run. He just looked at Ethan and smiled. You think it ends with me? It never ends. As they cuffed him, Ethan leaned in close and whispered, Good. Then I'm just getting started. Frank Carter sat alone in his study, hands clasped over his knees, his army uniform jacket draped across the chair. He hadn't worn medals in years, not outside formal memorials. But tonight, one lay beside him on the desk, the Distinguished Service Cross. Not for a speech. For a reckoning. Ethan entered quietly, holding 2 glasses. You earned this, Frank said, nodding to the medal. Ethan shook his head. You lost brothers for that. I almost lost my life to people I called family. Frank leaned back. That's the difference. My war was on foreign soil. Yours walked through the front door with a damn bottle of wine. Silence. The weight of everything hung between them. Betrayal, survival, the grotesque irony of a wedding turned federal sting. I keep wondering, Ethan said, what part of me let them get that close? What weakness did they smell? Frank looked at him, voice steady. You were kind. You loved without armor. That's not weakness. That's why you survived. Ethan's jaw tensed. I didn't survive. I buried myself inside lies for 5 years. Frank slid the medal across the table. You came out clean. That's all that matters. Ethan stared at it. Then him. I'm not done yet. Jessica sat in an orange jumpsuit, chained at the wrists, a public defender at her side. Her eyes were hollow now, no sparkle, no seduction. Just calculation. The prosecutor dropped a manila folder in front of her. New charges. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Tech-assisted laundering. You'll never see daylight unless you help us bury Lucas. Jessica's lawyer leaned over. They're offering 20 years if you flip. Jessica didn't flinch. What about immunity? The prosecutor laughed. You planned your fiancé's murder. In a wedding dress. You don't get immunity. Jessica's face hardened. You need me. No, a voice said from the back of the room. Ethan stepped in, arms crossed, flanked by Agent Lennox. Jessica's breath caught. You're not part of this meeting, her lawyer snapped. I am now, Ethan said. I'm the victim. And I'm here to say, don't bargain with her. Let her rot. Jessica stood. I did what I had to. He was gonna leave me. I saw it in his eyes. No, Ethan said calmly. You saw someone who loved you enough to trust you. And you twisted it into a weapon. He dropped a document on the table. Divorce papers. Signed. Irrevocable. Jessica stared at them like a death sentence. Ethan turned to leave, voice flat. I want nothing from you. No revenge. No attention. Just the silence of your sentence. The trial was standing room only. Journalists filled the gallery. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as Ethan Carter took the stand. He adjusted the mic, looked toward the jury, and began. My name is Ethan Carter. I was supposed to marry Jessica Monroe on May 4th. Instead, I nearly became a casualty of a plan disguised as love. The room quieted. He continued. She told me she loved me, slept beside me, took my name into wedding vows, while texting her lover about when and how to kill me. He paused. I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was numb. I'd built a life around her. A future. But what I didn't know was that behind every smile was a countdown. The jury stared, unmoving. And when I found out, I didn't run. I let her walk toward the altar. I let her put on the dress. Because I wanted her to taste the life she thought she was stealing before it was ripped away. Gasps. The prosecutor nodded in approval. Ethan's voice dropped. She betrayed my heart. But she also betrayed trust. Humanity. And when you hand down her sentence, I hope you remember this, she wasn't forced into it. She chose it. Coldly. Consciously. He stepped down. And the courtroom didn't breathe until he'd sat back down. Jessica sat behind the defense table with a look that could curdle milk, calculated victimhood laced with rage. Her lawyer leaned in. Stick to the script. Sympathy equals survival. She nodded, lifting her chin as if that could hide the stench of guilt. The prosecution opened hard. Jessica Monroe presented herself as a bride, but planned murder with the precision of a trained assassin. They played the audio recordings, the messages, the motel footage. Jessica winced as her own voice echoed in the courtroom. We hike. He slips. We split the money. Easy. Her lawyer objected. Overruled. Each clip hit like a hammer. Lucas wasn't present. He'd been separated for a separate federal trial, but his shadow loomed over everything. And Jessica, cornered without her puppet master, looked smaller by the hour. Then came the blow she hadn't expected. Greg took the stand and told them everything. Every payment rerouted. Every meeting she arranged. Every whisper she sent through Danny to Lucas. Jessica's hands trembled in her lap. Because now, everyone knew. She wasn't just complicit. She was the architect. And her kingdom of lies was burning brick by lying brick. The courtroom air felt heavier than usual. Jessica sat stiffly, her hands folded, though the cuffs bit slightly into her wrists. Her lawyer whispered that the best case outcome was 15 to 20 years with possible parole. Worst case? She'd never leave prison before her 50s. The judge read the jury's verdict slowly, carefully, guilty on all counts. Jessica's mouth parted slightly. The room didn't erupt, it just froze. Like the silence was louder than any reaction. The judge continued. For orchestrating a conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice, Jessica Monroe is hereby sentenced to 27 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 18. A few audible gasps. Ethan closed his eyes once. No relief, no satisfaction. Just a quiet end to one hell of a story. Jessica turned to look at him as they led her away. Ethan, she started. He met her eyes, but said nothing. Some people don't deserve last words. Weeks passed. Life moved, but the scars remained. Ethan returned to his apartment, donated her things, repainted the walls. There were no more reporters outside. No court hearings. Just silence. And then, the first letter came, postmarked from the Federal Correctional Institute. Signed, Jess. He didn't open it. He burned it. The second came a week later. Then a third, each more desperate. I was manipulated. I didn't know what I was doing. I miss who we were. Ethan sat by the window with the fourth one in his hand. Still sealed. Still clean. He stared at it for a long time, then dropped it into the fireplace. Because the truth wasn't complicated anymore. She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted relevance. And she wasn't going to get either. The viral video of the Alter arrest had racked up over 11 million views. Podcasts broke it down frame by frame. True crime channels narrated Ethan's story like he was some character in a Netflix thriller. Titles popped up. Groom outsmarts his killer bride. Military dad saves son at wedding. Ethan ignored them all. He didn't want a following. He didn't want fame. But every time he walked into a grocery store, someone whispered. Someone nodded. Sometimes they just stared. One night, at a restaurant, a stranger approached his table. "You're him, right?" she asked. "The guy from the wedding?" Ethan nodded politely. "I used to be." She smiled. "You're a legend." You stayed calm. Like, tactical. Ethan gave the smallest smile. And that was it. He didn't want applause. He just wanted to go back to being a nobody, with peace, not noise. Frank Carter stood in front of his unit, eyes damp but posture firm. After 30 years, he was finally hanging up the uniform. "I've fought wars across the ocean," he said in his farewell speech, "but the most important fight I ever faced was right here, protecting my son." Ethan stood at the back, watching silently. Proud. Later that day, Frank handed Ethan a wooden box. Inside was his old field compass and a folded U.S. flag. "Time you start leading your own path," Frank said. Ethan nodded. "But what if it's the wrong one?" Frank smiled, that tired, soldier's kind of smile. "Then you pivot. But you never stop walking." They hugged, tight and wordless. Because war was over, and rebuilding had begun. Lucas Hayes hadn't spoken since his arrest. No plea. No outburst. Just that smug, untouchable silence. Like a man who knew something the rest of the world didn't. Now, he was finally being transported under heavy federal custody from the classified holding site to a secure court facility for a sealed indictment hearing. But Ethan wasn't here to watch through glass. He'd been cleared to speak. Face to face. It wasn't standard. But nothing about this story had ever followed protocol. He entered the holding room. A metal table. One camera overhead. 2 chairs. And across from him, Lucas. He looked thinner. Less polished. But his eyes still held that same reptilian gleam. "Ethan," he said smoothly. "Didn't expect you'd want to see me again." "I didn't," Ethan replied. "But I couldn't leave a single part of this story unfinished." Lucas leaned back, chained but relaxed. "Let me guess. You want closure?" "No," Ethan said. "I want confirmation." "Of what?" "That you never loved her. That she was just a pawn. That all of this, the affair, the wedding, the murder plot, was just another day at the office." Lucas smirked. "You needed confirmation of that?" Ethan stared at him. "No. I needed to look in your face when the walls closed in." He slid a USB stick onto the table. "This is every name you laundered money through. Every shell company. Every recorded call." Lucas's smile faltered. "And tomorrow?" Ethan added. "It goes public." Lucas leaned forward, face darkening. "You think I'm the end of the story?" "No," Ethan whispered. "But I'm the end of yours." The courtroom for Lucas's trial was closed to the public. National security. But Ethan was allowed inside. He sat in the second row, hands clasped, back straight. Lucas sat cuffed, calm, untouched by nerves, until the prosecutor began reading the network files uncovered by Ethan and Frank. Bank statements, routed assets, trafficked intel. He didn't flinch at the mention of fake passports or arms deals. But when Jessica's name came up, he laughed, loudly. The room turned. "She thought she was running the con," he said. "She was just the packaging." The judge banged the gavel. "You are here to be sentenced, Mr. Hayes, not to gloat." Lucas smiled dead-eyed. "I'm already a dead man either way." The prosecutor continued. "For international crimes, conspiracy against state interests, and multiple attempted homicides, The court sentences Lucas Hayes to life imprisonment in a federal black site, without possibility of parole. Lucas simply turned toward Ethan and winked, but Ethan didn't flinch, because Lucas was right about one thing. He was already a dead man, and dead men don't get the last word. Weeks later, Ethan sat on a bench in the local park where he used to run with Jessica. The memories didn't hurt anymore. They didn't sting. They just existed. Frank joined him with 2 coffees. "No headlines today," he said. "Feels weird." Ethan smiled faintly. "Peace always does it first." They sat in silence for a minute. Then Ethan asked, "Did you ever think we'd come out of it this clean?" Frank sipped his coffee. "No such thing as clean when blood's been promised." Ethan nodded. "But I didn't lose myself," he said. "I walked through hell, and I didn't become them." Frank raised his cup. "That's the win." They toasted in silence. No speeches, no medals, just quiet clarity. 2 months later, Ethan got a call from Ava Monroe, Jessica's cousin. She was a freelance investigative journalist, sharp, unfiltered, and nothing like her relative. "I'm not here to sell your story," she said at the coffee shop. "I'm here to offer you the chance to finish it." Ethan raised a brow. "Why me?" "Because most people survive hell and try to forget it. You didn't. You watched it burn and walked out carrying proof." She slid over a binder. Inside, a pitch. A full podcast and docuseries planned, not tabloid trash. Real, layered investigative storytelling. "I don't want your trauma," she said. "I want your mind, your clarity, your voice." Ethan looked down at the binder, then at her. "You want me to co-host?" "I want you to own it," Ava said. He thought about it, then smiled. "Then let's show people what monsters look like in wedding suits." Ethan never thought he'd find peace again, but it came slowly, stubbornly, in little ways. He repainted the apartment, replaced the couch, donated every wedding gift still sealed in plastic. Morning coffee returned. So did sleep. And then, something unexpected happened. Laughter. Not the forced kind. The real, from your chest kind. It came over brunch with Ava, after she mocked her own editing skills. "You used Comic Sans?" Ethan had laughed. "It was an ironic choice," she replied, deadpan. A beat passed. Then they both cracked up. It didn't feel like betrayal. It didn't feel like guilt. It felt real. Later that week, as they sat editing the first trailer for the docuseries, White Lace and Red Flags, Ava glanced at Ethan. "You sure you're okay putting your face out there again?" Ethan nodded. "If it helps someone else dodge a bullet in a dress?" "Yeah." She smiled. "Good. Because I think you're more than just a survivor. I don't want to be a symbol." "Too late," she said. A cream-colored envelope arrived one evening. Elegant. Formal. No return address. Inside, an invitation. The wedding of Caroline and Michael, May 4th, Westmoreland Estate. Ethan blinked. Same venue. Same date. A full year later. He almost tossed it. But something stopped him. He remembered Caroline, a friend of Jessica's, oddly quiet during the chaos. She had cried during Jessica's arrest, not out of sympathy, but something else. Maybe relief? Ava sat across the room, reading. "You going?" He held up the invite. "Do I look like a man dumb enough to attend another May 4th wedding at the crime scene?" She grinned. "Yeah, but also like a man who might need to. Closure. Choice." He looked out the window. "Maybe I go," he said. "Maybe I show up, not as a groom, not as a victim, but as a man who lived." Ava raised her coffee. "To that version of you." Westmoreland looked the same. Perfect hedges. White chairs. Roses climbing stone walls. But Ethan wasn't walking toward an altar this time. He was just a guest. He wore no tie. No panic. Just calm. People whispered as he passed, some recognizing him. But most just nodded. He nodded back. Caroline greeted him with teary eyes. "I wasn't sure you'd come." He smiled gently. "I wasn't either." She hugged him. "You being here, it means more than you know." He sat in the third row, beside Ava, who carried a small recorder for a bonus episode. "This feel weird?" she asked. "A little," he admitted, "but not wrong." The ceremony was quick, heartfelt, simple. No lies. No tension. When the couple kissed, Ethan clapped. No performance. Just honesty. For once, love didn't feel like a threat. It felt like hope. Back at home that night, Ethan received a call from Agent Lennox. You have a minute? Always. She sounded tense. Something came in through an internal audit. We missed it in the original sweep. He stood alert. What is it? A wire transfer. Small. Quiet. Buried deep in an offshore crawl space. Made 2 weeks before your wedding. Ethan's heartbeat picked up. Lennox continued. It wasn't from Jessica. Or Lucas. It came from a third party. He froze. Who? She hesitated. Rachel Carter. Ethan blinked. My mother's name? No, not your mother. Your stepmother. Frank's wife. The silence hit like a fist. She paid Lucas's shell company, Lennox confirmed. There's a direct trail. Ethan's mouth went dry. Why? We don't know. Yet. He hung up slowly, staring into the dark. The story wasn't over. It had just moved closer than ever before. Ethan didn't wait long. The moment he hung up with Agent Lennox, he got in the car and drove straight to Frank's house. Not a word. No warning. He knocked once. Frank opened the door in his old army hoodie, eyes tired but alert. What's going on? He asked. Ethan walked in without answering. Dropped his phone on the table. Pressed play on the voicemail Lennox had sent. Transfer from Rachel Carter, routed through Holloway Group, 2 weeks prior to the wedding. Frank didn't blink. Didn't move. Ethan stared at him. Tell me you didn't know. Frank sat down slowly. She didn't tell me. That's not what I asked. Frank looked up. I didn't know until a week after the wedding. It was buried. I found it in our shared email account when the audit came through. She wired money to a shell company, and I didn't want to believe it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know what it meant. I still don't. Ethan's jaw clenched. She gave money to the same network that tried to kill me. Frank's voice dropped. I confronted her. She said it was for an investment, that she didn't know who was behind it. Do you believe her? Frank's silence was answer enough. Ethan turned toward the door. Where are you going? Frank asked. To ask her myself. Frank stood. I'll go with you. Ethan shook his head. This time. I need to finish it alone. Rachel Carter opened the door like she wasn't expecting a reckoning. Her blonde hair was tucked back. She wore soft colors. Too soft. Ethan, she said. This is a surprise. He didn't answer. Just walked past her into the living room. Is Frank okay? She asked. Ethan turned slowly. I know about the wire. She froze mid-step. The one you sent to Lucas's company. 2 weeks before the wedding. Rachel blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Her shoulders dropped. It was an investment opportunity. I didn't know who was behind it. Rachel, you sent money to a network tied to a fugitive assassin who tried to murder your stepson. Silence. Then she spoke quietly, almost inaudibly. I thought it was just a private fund. I was in debt, Ethan. I was scared. I didn't tell Frank because he'd think I was gambling again. Ethan's face darkened. So you were ready to risk everything. Everyone. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, he said coldly. And you almost got away with it. Rachel took a shaky breath. Are you going to tell him? He already knows. A pause. And he didn't come with you? No. Because he still wants to believe the woman he married didn't help fund his son's murder. Rachel crumbled into the nearest chair. Ethan stared down at her. I don't need revenge anymore. I don't even need closure. He walked to the door, pausing. I just needed to look in your eyes when you realized you never fooled me. And then he left, without anger, without noise. Just the silence of a man who's finally free. Ethan stood at the edge of the overlook where Jessica once planned to fake a tragic fall. Now, the wind was calm. The view was sharp, pure. And Ethan was alive, not just breathing, but living. He sat on the rock outcrop and let silence settle around him, a rare luxury after months of chaos, betrayal, and uncovering truth that changed everything he believed about love, trust, and even family. His phone buzzed. A message from Ava. New episode is trending. Thousands of downloads in an hour. You finally gave this story an ending. He smiled faintly. It wasn't about numbers. It was about taking the pain and turning it into something no one could twist or rewrite again. He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. Frank's last handwritten letter. Just 4 words. You made it out. Ethan closed his eyes. He had. Not as the man he used to be. Softer, maybe more naive, but as someone stronger. Smarter. Sharper. Scarred, yes, but not broken. And in that stillness, one truth settled in his chest. He had outlived every lie ever told to him. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Ethan stepped onto a stage at a community college seminar, invited by a professor who'd followed the podcast series. The room was filled with students, families, and curious faces. He took a deep breath. This story started at a wedding, he said. Mine. Scattered chuckles. But it wasn't about a dress or vows. It was about how far betrayal can go, and how far truth has to reach to survive it. He paused, letting the weight of that hang in the air. Jessica wore a white dress. Lucas wore a smile. Danny wore my trust. And Rachel wore shame behind silence. But me? I wore the one thing they didn't expect. He leaned forward. Resilience. The room was silent. Then a hand went up. A girl asked softly, if you could go back, would you want to unsee everything? Ethan didn't hesitate. No, because the truth hurts. But lies rot, and I'd rather be wounded than poisoned. Afterward, he walked outside, sun warm on his back. Ava joined him, recorder in hand. You ready to record the final line? She asked. Ethan looked out over the lawn and spoke clearly. So here's my question for you. If someone close to you is quietly cutting the brakes on your life, would you even notice? He looked directly into the lens. And now that you've heard my story, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. He smiled, turned to Ava. And if this made you feel anything, hit like. Subscribe. Not for me, but for the next person who doesn't yet know they're sleeping beside a monster in disguise. He turned, walking away into the sun, voice fading with one last line. Because sometimes, happily ever after, means walking away before the blade finds your back.